Today's Elko Live is a condensed version of the Elko County Commission meeting on Friday, in which the local governing board debated a controversial assembly bill that would appropriate $25 million for capital projects for schools located on qualified tribal lands and another $25 million for capital projects at all other schools. Now, this account would act as a matching fund for rural counties that decide to enact a tax rate outside the cap for purposes of school district capital projects. But the majority of Elko County commissioners view the legislation as an overreach of state government, as it requires Elko County specifically to enact a tax to build a tribal school at Owyhee. As explained by the rural schools lobbyist Will Adler during Friday's discussion, AB 519 is a recognition by the state that rural Nevada communities do not have the resources to replace aging school buildings, of which a few are between 50 to 100 years old. Elko County commissioners voted during Friday's meeting to support AB 519 4-1 after being advised they would have a year to decide how much tax to direct or whether to challenge the constitutionality of the bill, which is also subject to Governor Joe Lombardo's veto pen. The governor has demonstrated he is not an advocate for government overreach. There is discussion from Commissioners Delmo Andriozzi, John Carr, Wildy Bruff, and Travis Gerber, as well as lobbyist Will Adler. The meeting opens with comments by Elko County Commission Chair Rex Steniger.
It imposed a tax on one county in Nevada, and that's Elko County. I think that's wrong. I think legislation should be universal. It also exempts this new school tax from a state mandated tax cap. I don't see how the legislature can pass a tax cap and then pass a tax that is exempt from the tax cap. And that tax cap was imposed to protect our taxpayers. By doing this, they expose our taxpayers to another 25-cent tax. I think that's wrong. It also meddles in our county affairs. I feel that the voters rejected that pay-as-you-go tax because they had lost faith in how the school district was spending that money. I said, that's a course correction. We punish the school board for their actions. When the state steps in and orders us to reimpose a tax, that circumvents our course correction. I think that's also wrong. It also sends, the $64.5 million plus an additional $25 million in whatever you want to call it, slush fund, whatever, to the Owyhee Indian Reservation. I think that's wrong. They declare themselves a sovereign nation, and if they do, and they're exempted from all our taxes, our property taxes, our sales taxes, everything. And I think if they declare themselves to be a sovereign nation, then we should demand that they remain a sovereign nation. If they want the state's tax dollars, then they ought to start paying taxes into that fund. So I think it's wrong on that count too. I also think this bill is extortion. It tells us we either pass a 1-cent tax or the state will mandate a 25-cent tax. That's wrong. And finally, we have Will Adler on the line here. I have my notes that it got rid of that oversight board, but I understand that there's an amendment that's going to be added back in. So I'll let Will explain that when he gets a chance. But with all that said, it does provide us, what do you call it, $64.5 million or $89 million to the Owyhee Indian Reservation. And I think it would be irresponsible on our part to turn that money down, because Owyhee is part of the Elko County School District, and they need a new school. The Elko County taxpayers would eventually be on the hook for that money. So I will end up supporting it, but I think it's an absolutely horrible bill. That's all I'm going to say. Anybody else?
That's all you're going to say, aren't you?
Okay.
So yeah, thanks, Rex, and thanks for that description and your perspective, because I think it points to something that's really important here about local government. So I get and understand maybe perception from people that aren't governing here locally, and I really truly believe that there is a misunderstanding or an understanding that we have here that's better regarding what you said regarding the 75-cent tax, property tax the school district has had for 40 years, generates the tune about $17 million a year that they enjoyed for a long time. And, we're aware of that. And so recently the voters just voted that out. So, we're moving on to our second budget year, where we had, and because of the way the tax cap was written, like you said, and the abatements, this board decided to bring that tax in because we have some capital needs here as well, but also to preserve those dollars. We didn't take the whole thing, but to preserve those dollars because of the impacts that there would have had on the tax cap and the abatements going forward. So it was I think it was a pretty wise decision that this board made. But there again, not knowing entirely, what was going on there, I think there's a misunderstanding or not a good understanding about what happened here locally on a local level. So, I agree with you that, with many of the things you said there, I do like the couple of components of the bill that I do like is obviously really what it is an appropriations bill with this other items on there. And, to get a new school in Owyhee is a good thing, but then also to have this grant program that's developed by this bill for all counties under 100,000 population, I think is a good thing too, because I know there are places like White Pine and other counties that then, because of the taxes in their own communities and because of the cost of infrastructure like this, it's very difficult for them to raise enough taxes to pay for improvements like that. So this is another tool for counties whose population are $100,000 to leverage their own local tax dollars and get a grant to build some schools throughout the state of Nevada. So I think those are the two good elements of the bill. But other than that, I concur with you, and I just wanted to throw in that it's at least my perception and my observation that there's, and how can we expect them to understand what's happened here locally? They're not here. We understand that. And again, this is a local government issue that we're a lot more keenly aware of. So, and I do like the idea of the oversight committee as well. So I'm glad to see that amendment happen, because I think, we are, at the end of the day, we're talking about people's tax money, and that tax money needs to be spent prudently, and it needs to be spent with some oversight and buy-in from the stakeholders. And I think that's one way that you get that done.
You mentioned we can't expect them to know the local politics, but I do expect them to come ask us, and they did. Anybody else like to comment? John?
I'm trying to be more positive on this bill, even though I agree with a lot of the sentiment you said, Rex, not all of it, but quite a bit on how it's worded and how they haven't talked to us, communicated with us. I was on the school board 13 years, and while that school up there is sure not the finest, most immaculately maintained or even designed, I'm not quite so sure it's 100% unsafe and about to fall down tomorrow. But no, Owyhee could use a new school that's not on that highway and opt to more of the community itself. So I'll be voting for it, because this bill does more of some of the things that are intended, like an oversight on the pay-as-you-go, even though this is not going to be pay-as-you-go, but for this talk, I'll call it that. School money for capital projects. Because I think even though I was on, like I said, school board 13 years, I think there were some mistakes made by the last board, and even when I was on the board, of seeing the community as a whole. So that board would be a good recommendation. But as you've said, there is quite a bit on this. It's just all of a sudden crammed down our throat. This is also not talked to as a county other than the 2 or 3 days beforehand. But no, I'll be voting for it as well, because of some of the positives I'm trying to be. And also the state seems to be at least trying to make up for the last group of leaders that gutted rural education. Some of that, I think, has been lost in this, that part of the reason the school board was using some of the money for maintenance and other things on their capital project, maintenance projects were huge ones, because they ran the schools down, because the money from the state was not there. And that's, unfortunately, the school district is not autonomous. It is state money. Elko County School District does not get Elko County money. Elko County money goes to the state, and the state redistributes it. And then the last legislative session or two ago, they changed how that was put in, and once again gutted the rurals, gutted the gold tax and the other ones that weren't as dependent on it. So this is at least a minor step by, I think, our governor and some of the legislators to start realizing that they gutted the rurals. So once again, I'm trying to be a little more positive on it. But I agree with a lot of what you said, Mr. Senator. But I will be voting for it on some kind of an increment.
Sorry, that's your done. Well, do you have anything?
Yes. The legislature, once again, has decided that they don't work for the people, that the people work for them. You're right about the extortion comment that you made, Chairman. We are the only school district in the state of Nevada that does not owe a bunch of bond money for our schools. As I understand it, I think our schools are all paid for. I haven't heard anybody mention that. I haven't heard anything from the legislature about that. Not a thing. I do think if the state wants to step up and buy Owyhee a school, I'm fine with that. I'm fine. I don't think that they should be doing our job or telling us that they're going to force us to charge our voters more taxes. I just don't think that's right. And White Pine County, when they built their last new school, they ended up going into receivership because they spent way too much and the state had to go in and take them over. They're the only county that I know that's had to do that. Something's got to be wrong there. They don't ever have enough money to build their school. I realize we have some old schools. Wells is an old school. Owyhee is an old school. Harlan has some old schools. I also think that they've been well maintained, and I think everything's fine. I think because there are some, and I forget what they called it in the paper yesterday, some kind of carbons or something that's under the school in the water. I think that's basically a joke. And I guess that's all I have. I don't know yet if I'll be for this bill or not.
Do you have anything?
I just concur with the comments that have been made. I don't like that this bill is being forced upon us so quickly without consideration. And just concur with a lot of the comments that have already been made.
Yeah. Thanks. Yep. Okay.
So, one thing that I neglected to mention in the earlier comment. So remember, we have a budgetary requirement and a requirement for the Department of Taxation on how we do things. We've already been through those steps. Our budget is already submitted and approved, primary and final budget. So, and I personally am not in favor of going outside of the cap. I would rather acquiesce one of the 1 cent that we have in our capital that we've just created a while ago, the 1 cent from there. But we're still going to have to make an application through the Department of Taxation, I believe, in February, and that would be part of next budget year. So I don't even know how we could implement that right now within the context of the Nevada revised statute. So just something that we're going to have to figure out going forward. But it would be my recommendation. I have no interest of going above the cap here, and would rather give 1 cent out of that 44 cents back.
Definitely. I'll save that question for Will. But now I want to go to Rand. When Rand first arrived, I said, how can this possibly be constitutional? And Rand agreed with me and thinks it is not. Would you please explain that?
Yeah, so I question the constitutionality of Section 2 and Section 8 of the bill. Under Article 4, Section 20 and 21, that's your special laws, local and special laws. The legislature is really not supposed to do that, especially for enumerated under Section 20 cases, which one of those is county business. The other one that I think really would apply is for the assessment and collection of taxes for state, county, and township purposes. This is clearly a tax. It is assessment for a tax. I think it makes a local law for that. And I think it very well could violate that constitutional provision.
Thank you, Rand. And now we'll move on to Will. Would you like to jump in?
Sure, if you guys would like to have me. Will Adler here, for the record. I'm the principal of Silver State Government Relations, and I work with Duck Valley Tribal Reservation, and I've been working on kind of this issue all year, if that makes some sense when it comes to this legislature, at least. But I got thrown into this last minute as well. It was the first week of February. The tribe called me and said, you know, we have a need, and there is a desire from Alexis Hansen to bring forward an appropriation bill. Can we do something with it? The genesis of that was Alexis Hansen's bill, and the end product is AB 519 before you. And if it pleases the commission, I would like to maybe go through a couple sections of the bill based on some of the comments I heard, and maybe provide some illumination, and or we could do some Q&A back and forth if that is a proper mechanism for this commission. But if it's okay, let me go through a couple sections and then we do some questions.
Okay. Can you start off by explaining the amendment that includes the oversight board?
Yep. So the amendment before you right now is the proposed amendment that went to the committee, I do believe. The real addition is section 6.6 or section 6 sub 6, as you can see in green there, is the oversight committee generally this is what it will look like, but I can state that this is being turned into legalese as it is by the Legislative Council Bureau's drafters. So this is the base language that was submitted to the committee, and very similar language will be coming out the other side. But what we're waiting for is literally the legal drafting to be done and to be reintroduced to the bill itself. But the committee took this in during the hearing at the Assembly Ways and Means Committee, and they asked to amend it with just this section 6.6 in it, but to modify it a little bit to state more clearly that these would be public meetings that the public are invited to, which is kind of the intent for it to be a public-facing board, so that there could be community discussion about the revenues collected, how they're spent, and sort of what match grants you guys are looking to accumulate through the collection of these revenues. Some of that is kind of already laid out in the bill, where it says you have to be dedicating a project to enter into these taxes anyhow, right? So Section 3 of the bill does get into that. But to be clear, this Section 6.6 was encompassed in the bill. It was taken in, just isn't online yet because the delay in legal drafting. As the session closes, it gets crammed up with a lot of legal drafting. So it's not hidden or anything. It's just a normal process delay, but it is included in the bill today, as the committee did vote it through with that section intact, just to be clear. And then if you'd like, Rex, I can go through sort of section 2 and 3 and 4 and sort of explain how each of them works or why, maybe.
Will, if I can ask a quick question. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, this has to still go to the Senate and pass,
yes,
and of course be signed by our governor, or it doesn't sign and all that BS. But anyway, what's the chances of this changing in the Senate and have to be brought back, or have you heard any verbiage? I don't mind asking questions from everybody, but if it's already there's a copy in the Senate that's totally different, I'd be more curious, or if this is about what they're looking at. Please, if you could answer that first.
That's a good legislative sausage question. That's a good processy one. So today, actually, it hasn't even left the Assembly just yet. So it has gotten its Assembly Ways and Means and the work session or vote out of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee today. It's sitting there waiting for that amendment to be drafted and land on it. The committee has voted it with that amendment. It needs to get that language attached to it. Then it can go to the Assembly floor to get an Assembly floor vote. They'll then be transmitted to the Senate. It may get a Senate finance hearing in a formal room, or they may just behind the bar vote it on the floor there in the Senate Finance Committee. They can sort of just meet on the floor of the Senate, behind the bar, vote it, and then send it to the Senate floor for a vote. The question really was, what's the chance of this language changing, or is there going to be a lot of new things or gimmicks that could show up, or is this really the language we're looking at, or we're going to be having at the end of this? Is kind of the real question, right?
Correct. And
I would say that is easier to answer. This is going to be the language we see. There are not going to be big impactful changes at this time. We did look to try and change the shall language to make it a non-mandate shall. A couple drafts floated around that got rid of the shall. One of them did remove the shall, but it did link Elko to the revenues received in Section 10, which probably is the worst way to link you to the bill because it did imply, you should repay the free money. So I think the current draft of the bill is a very well done, sort of well structured bill. But I do think this is the bill you're going to see passed and sent to the governor. If maybe a couple words here or there, like I said, the legalese of Section 6 will sort of be corrected to make it a real public facing board. But the intent and the content here should be pretty much what you're seeing.
Okay, well, I had a couple other questions for you.
Yeah.
Don't I remember, I can't find it right now, but somewhere in here that says we have to do this within 1 year.
So I can say we can do Section 2, and it links to Section 8. And then Section 2 and 8 are kind of both linked to Section 10, if we want to sort of talk about the bill in its pieces. And that does actually make it a little bit easier to go through. So if it pleases you, Rex, and the rest of the council, I'd be glad to sort of give it to you in bubbles, and then that might take care of some of the bigger questions.
How long is that going to take?
I'll do it in 30 seconds or less. Let's do this. So Section 2 of the bill, I'll try. So Section 2 of the bill is linkage to Section 8 by saying this provision, which will say Elko, it has county of a population, but Elko shall implement a 1 to 25 cent property tax for the purpose of collecting funds that will stay in your county treasury for your own use on dedicated tribal school properties. So Section 8, though, says if Elko does not go into that or does not pick between 1 and 25 cents, until we get there.
No, Section 8.
Section 8 says if Elko does not choose to pick between 1 and 25 cents by June 30th, 2024, so June next year, a tax shall be selected or levied upon you by the state of Nevada at the maxed out rate of 25 cents, right? So it basically says, could you please implement this provision by next year, or kind of similar comments to one of your council members there. Does it have to be done today, or could we even do this today? We've already set the budgetary figures. Maybe not, or possibly not. I agree. But by February, you could sort of have it talked about and introduce it into the next budgetary year. But that would be completely fine under the provisions of this bill. They did try and account for that. They didn't want it to be do it now, even if it didn't make sense for a local government to do it now. That was thought of and did have some things spoken to it in the hearing. But 2 and 8 do link to Section 10, if we want to go down there, just by saying, what is Section 10? Section 10 is a direct appropriation from the state of Nevada General Fund to Elko County School District. It is for the known costs of building the new school at Owyhee. So the issue today for the Nevada legislature is they meet biannually, they meet every other year, and they do want to sort of dedicate, we're fixing Owyhee. We want to be done with this issue, if that makes sense. So the only problem is that the budget we have today for the repairing of the Owyhee school comes from Elko County School District, and it is a very good budget. It is a line item similar to every school they've built, but they took the last school they built of a similar size for 500 children, and they just put the best estimate they could together. I think it was 28% or 38%. I don't remember exactly which. They just added an additional percentage to the known cost of the last school to show the unknown cost of building 110 miles north of Elko. So why I say 10 is linked to 2 and 10 and 2 go together is the idea is we're going to provide a check for the known cost, $64.5 million to build Owyhee. The tribe is going to put up what they can, I think about $16 million. And the full budget from Elko County School District estimate was $77 or $78 million, right? 77 with some change maybe. So that was the best estimate we had for the cost to fix Owyhee. But really, as we all know, sitting here as adults building in 2023, cost overages have been monstrous the last 3 years. Anything I've built commercially or just any business who's moved into Nevada who I've worked with, everything we've done, the cost overages have always been there. So I think really 2 is linked to 10 by saying, Elko, you need to start entering into an account to start raising some revenues. So if there is a cost overage or an unknown cost for Owyhee, we're writing a check to cover it. you guys please cover the overages, but you don't have to cover all of them even. There's also an account in Section 9 that has $25 million in it for just tribal-based properties only. So 2 does link to 9, and it does link to 10, but 2 basically says start generating revenue in a county account that you get to keep that will be based upon match grants that you will receive from the state of Nevada. The Nevada Section 9 of the bill is for, yes, tribal-based schools, $25 million, but also all rural schools, right? It has an additional $25 million in it, which links Section 9 to Section 3. Section 3 is available for all counties of 100,000 or less. Anyone can apply to the funds available in Section 9 and the state account that is now being filled up. That, for all intents and purposes, and the intent of this going into the future is this is how Nevada is going to try and work with rural Nevada, Vegas, Nevada. It's going to start working with rural Nevada and having a dedicated account that people can request against. Bert Gurr, Pete, other electeds can say, we have a need in our counties, in our state. Give us half, basically, and they'll start raising half of their own. That half will be accessible for, yes, tribal needs and real, normal school needs, not real schools, but normal K through 12 school needs going forward. So I can say, previous commissioner comments, you listed a couple other schools that you said are kind of on the down slope or aren't as good as they could be. That's what Section 3 is for, is to start identifying those other schools now and dedicate, we're only entering into this taxable agreement for this known project in the future. We're dedicating 20 cents or whatever you choose to do, up to 25, to raise for that known future cost. State of Nevada, you're on the hook for half of that via this account on the grant side. So it is a complex bill. It does go back and forth and all the way together. But I would say the only reason there's a mandate in Section 2 or a shall is the idea that, okay, we're taking care of Owyhee here, but we don't know what really the total cost will be. Hopefully it won't cost more than what we've budgeted, but if it does, please start entering an account in place where, you can pay half and then you can get half out of that state tribal account that's there to cover whatever goes over for Owyhee.
We've got a motion. We've got a second. We've asked for public comment. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
I vote aye also. Any nays? Harley votes nay.
I'm going to vote nay.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1.
Hear the discussion in its entirety online in the Elko County Meeting Archive at elkocountynv.net. The discussion you heard broadcast today was edited for length. Thanks for listening to Elko Live here on KELK for more local news and more local information.